the episode Close Rick Encounters of the Rick Kind, we are introduced to the Citadel of Ricks for the first time. We learn that Ricks and Mortys from all different universes come together. There are some pretty interesting versions of Rick and Morty in the Citadel, but in the Season 3 opener in the Rick Shank Redemption, there is one version of them who got the biggest attention from the fan base, and that is Rick or Morty. Well, he is in a little complicated situation, and today I want to talk about everything that we know about him. But before starting, I want to ask you all to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more. I hope you all have a great day. Now let's start the video. Well, Morty Rick is either a Rick, a Morty, or a combination of both. He wears Morty's clothes with Rick's lab coat. He shares his head shape and facial structure with Morty, while his hairstyle and physique, along with his hair and skin colors, are shared with Rick. He appeared only once in the series in the first episode of the third season, in the Rick Shank Redemption in the background of the Citadel of Ricks. So because of that, we don't really have a lot of information about him. Fortunately, we know one thing about him, and that is that he is Morty. The Rick Shank Redemption game identifies him as Scientist Morty. His card is not super strong, that could be explained by his limited time, but the fact that he is Morty tells us that he is one of the few Mortys who are respected from Ricks. We can also assume that he is far more intelligent compared to other Mortys, and I think he is one of the Mortys who do not need Ricks, since he is his own Rick. His introduction in the series would be a very interesting scene, since I think meeting Morty, who is arguably as smart as Rick, would make Rick Sanchez very jealous of him and wouldn't be like him at first, but I think Morty would have the opposite reaction and would be mesmerized by him. I believe Rick would regard Scientist Morty as a rival, just as he did Zeep Zandflorp in Season 2, Episode 6. He will try to prove that he is a better scientist than Morty, while I think Scientist Morty wouldn't really care, which would make Rick even more furious at him. I really wonder under what kind of circumstances will those three meet, but in order for them to meet, Scientist Morty has to be alive, and I really hope that in the same episode where he made his debut, many Mortys are killed when the Citadel of Ricks is transported into a prison of the Galactic Federation, and I really hope he is not one of the Mortys who died, because this concept seems very interesting and unique, and I would love to see it. His existence was one of the biggest clues for the popular theory that Rick and Morty were the same person. People note that Rick and Morty have surprisingly similar voices. Their dialogue has an almost improvisational tone. Keep in mind that Morty is only 14 and likely hasn't fully progressed through puberty yet. Rick, on the other hand, has 70 years of flask drinking, Calaxian crystal snorting, and multiverse jumping to gruff up his voice. Sure, Justin Roiland does the voice for both Rick and Morty, but the characters also share similar intentional speaking habits. Both characters stammer a lot and stutter on their W's, which suggests it's something that Morty never grew out of as he aged into Rick. Another hint that people suggest about that theory is that in the Season 3 opener, the Rick Shank Redemption, Rick is held captive by the Galactic Federation, and an agent is sent into his brain Inception style to see how Rick invented his infamous portal gun. Rick shows the agent a flashback of young Rick and his family, where Rick mentions that he used to wear blue pants. Who else wears blue pants? Morty. The animated short Rick and Morty vs. Genocider, which shows how Morty becomes one version of Rick, was the next hint about the theory. In July 2020, Adult Swim released Rick and Morty vs. Genocider, an 8.5-minute Japanese language anime short that supports the theory. Rick C-137 took over Morty via the potion to stay alive. The potion was made up of Rick's memories plus the Season 2 alien's parasite blood, allowing Morty to shapeshift into C-137 Rick. This all happens in the past via time travel, which is why Jerry calls saying that Morty is born. Evil Morty is the version that never took the potion, suggesting that he allowed his Rick to die as he continued living on as Morty. We can tell it's Evil Morty because he's controlling an evil Rick. Notice the control box. Also, the Rick taunting him in the end, "Wow, this timeline sucks," seems to be a hallucination or a ghost of his past, indicating Evil Morty took a different route by not taking the potion. Another hint about this theory was the similarity between Diana Sanchez and Annie. In the Rick Shank Redemption, we finally catch a glimpse of Rick's wife, Diane, and immediately notice that she looks a lot like Annie from the Anatomy Park episode in Season 1. Annie is one of the only people Morty has ever hooked up with, aside from his sex robot Gwendolyn in Raising Gazorpazorp. But if Annie and Diane are the same person, then why are their names different? Rick is a known war criminal. If he, Morty, and his wife, Diane, were on the run, one of the first things they would do is change their names. How do we even know Rick Sanchez is Rick's real name in the first place? It stands to reason that Morty changed his name while on the run, and eventually landed on Rick when he became Morty's grandfather. Next hint is Rick's temper towards Morty. Rick is one of the most self-loathing, hateful bastards in the multiverse. No one is particularly proud of what they were like at 14, but imagine if you had to hang out with your 14-year-old self all the time and put up with all of that nonsense. Rick is particularly harsh on Morty because he's his own worst critic, and he's forced to relive every stupid decision he made as a teenager. Plus, he knows Morty can take it, and that it will eventually turn him into a better person, or at least a Rickier person. The final one is Rick is completely desensitized, and Morty is following in his steps. Ever since the pilot episode, Rick has been putting Morty into some pretty ridiculous situations. Morty has buried his own corpse, forced an entire civilization into slave labor, and once kicked a jelly bean's ass because it tried to rape him. Rick is generally unfazed by these things. He's seen all of the crazy, fucked up stuff the multiverse has to offer, and he's slowly exposing Morty to it one adventure at a time. This explains why Rick is literally never shocked by anything in the multiverse. He's literally seen all of it before when he was a kid adventuring with his grandfather. As we can see, this theory makes somewhat sense, since there were a lot of hints that suggest it being true, but it has been heavily debunked by Season 5, where we saw Rick Sanchez's backstory. In Season 5, Episode 8, Rick Turnell, Friend Shine of the Spotless Mort, we can see Rick as 12 years old. He looks nothing like Morty, and for a brief second we can also see the picture of his parents hanging on the wall. This scene automatically debunks the theory of Morty and Rick being the same person, and I am happy about that, because I never really liked that theory to begin with. It would ruin both of their characters for me. Personally, I like the route the series is taking and really hope they won't change anything. As for Scientist Morty, I am glad that this theory is debunked because it makes the character very unique towards the other Mortys and Ricks. I really hope he wasn't killed during the Citadel's transportation into a prison of the Galactic Federation, or when evil Morty destroyed the whole Citadel. We can see that several Mortys survived that attack, and let's hope that the Scientist Morty was one of them. However, I don't think it's too far-fetched to assume that due to his high intellect, he sensed the hidden sinful side of evil Morty, and that's why he left the Citadel before evil Morty's attack happened on it, and that's how he survived that. Either way, I really hope that we will see him again, and this time we will actually see some action from him. He had the most interesting design compared to other Mortys and Ricks, and I really hope that he won't be left as just a background character for one episode. I really wonder what happened to his original Rick, and why he is taking his role in his universe. His Rick is most likely dead, which would explain his absence, and Scientist Morty might become a scientist in the first place to pay tribute to his dead grandfather. But that is just my theory and nothing more. Anyway, I guess this is all for today. What are your thoughts on Scientist Morty? Will he ever return to the series? Did he survive evil Morty's attack, and is he still alive? Let me know in the comments, like this video, and subscribe to the channel for more. Lonnie Bro is out. Bye.